Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Heavy Metallurgy Album Club. I'm one of your hosts, Marty, and look at us. If we were a band, we'd be a quintet. Looking sharp and ready to talk about some metal. We'll start down here with this fine young fella right here. How you doing, Kellen?
All right, full house tonight.
Yeah.
I love it. It's been a minute. Yeah, doing well. Just like everyone's mentioning in the comments here, it's all the holiday stuff going on, but we'll be quick and short with it this evening as we got a lot of people to get to. So what I've been spinning, inspired by, I guess, a little bit of this pick. This is from a couple of years ago, Zarathustra. Anyone? This is You're the Whore.
Is that
whore, not what, you're a whore.
Is that in the Chinese New Year? I did not know that.
Yes. Days of the Whore. Sorry, Days of the Whore. Zarathustra is a project that was formed by Necrobyssus from Verathron. It's kind of like if he would compiled all of his sort of experimental avant-garde ideas and put it into a black metal project. But the other musician on this record is also part of the Greek black metal scene. But anyway, this past week inspired me to pull this one out and give it a spin. So if you're a fan of either Verathron or some of the Greek black metal scene like Necromantia, and you like sort of that sort of left field leaning stuff, this would be one to check out on Van Records a couple years ago. And something a little bit slow and heavy. This is a band called Churchburn, Genocidal Rite. This is sort of Dave Suzuki's sludge project. So this is their second release, I want to say, but from a couple years ago as well. So those have been spinning this past week.
All right, good to see you. Good tunes. And Logan, what's up, man? How you doing?
Doing well. Busy time of year, as I'm sure everyone is agreeing. Basically saying. Last Sunday we did a stream all about grind on Depeche Commode's YouTube channel. So I got a giant stack of grindcore CDs here that I got to put away. Please go check that out.
Totaling 73 minutes worth of music.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked for 3 hours about, so each minute got 3. So Noisy Neighbors, Sulfuric Cautery, a bunch of good stuff, all crazy grindcore. And then Marty, I'm sure you're going to mention this at some point, but there's a new Advent. Oh, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I rushed it. Go ahead.
No, yeah, you guys broke new ground on a server, a Discord server. How exciting is that? There's Heavy Metallurgy Discord. I haven't been using Discord in a bit, but I brushing off the dust, figuring out how to use this platform again.
It's
in honor of metallurgy.
So far, everybody's been cool. It's a cool thing. I don't know. We'll see. It reminds me of the old Metal Maniacs message board in a way.
It's got potential. I'm excited to see where it goes. So far, everything looks great.
Almost 70 people in there now, which is cool.
There's a bunch of genre, pages, and Halloween gets its own somehow.
Yep.
But there's no sludge metal or doom. What is going on here?
I'm not done. It's been I'm adding a little bit here. I forgot to put in
do
thrash,
your job.
Yeah, thrash. Forgot thrash.
Admin,
there's people,
Marty.
Yeah, I just don't. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in.
And then,
anyway,
for those, so I'm using my old handle, so I'm not a metal and beer snob. There, I'm a guy named with the name of Doom Cult. So if you see a Doom Cult who's commenting in the Discord server, that's me, and that's because I was listening to this album a lot when I got Discord years ago. And then I'll be quick with this. I was doing homework because I'm not familiar with Jason McMaster really at all. So I made a quick slideshow. This is my homework for the night.
Extra credit.
I'm not trying to be a teacher's pet or nothing, but this Watchtower is crazy. The first time I listened to this, I can definitely hear some similarities to what he's doing on the album we're about to talk about. This was crazy. The fact he's in Dangerous Toys, there would definitely seem to be some inspiration for this character right here.
Dr. Roxo.
It's just the vocals that McMaster's putting down on here. And then I don't know if you guys knew this, but he's in like or you guys probably all do, and it's just me who doesn't, but he's in a traditional like band called Igniter. He's done
we got a promo for that. I listened to part of it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. He sounds entirely like a lot more, powerful and just, traditional heavy metal. But this is good, straightforward stuff and very different from the album we're talking about tonight. I don't know, it was cool diving into just how diverse his catalog is. And
he's also in a band called Dirty Looks and a bunch of stuff.
See?
Tons and tons.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Oh,
awesome.
I'm good.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I talked enough.
Jim.
So yeah, man, I picked up this reissue, Sodom's Tapping the Vein.
Nice.
Sounds really good. Happy with it, man. Dude, this it's the same album on 2 LPs. I don't know what the Redux version means, but man, I got like a little flaw on one side. It's like this little brown thing stuck in the vinyl. I've never seen anything like that. So if anybody has any ideas about how I can get that out, I don't know. I'm like unplayed. I pulled it out. This is a brand new record out of the shrink. And I'm like, what in the world? I've never seen anything like that. But other than that, happy to have it. Sounds really good. Then I was at my local record shop and he had some old OG Loudness. So got me some Thunder in the East.
Awesome.
Oh, man.
Great record. Love this stuff. Great guitar playing. I already had Lightning Strike, so this is cool. It's filling out the collection of the ones I want. And Hurricane Eyes. This is a great album too. There's a lot of junk on this, but man, dude, the title track, SDI, or not title track, the first song, SDI, that song is heavy as hell. You should check that out. Definitely one of Loudness's best songs I've ever done. So great stuff. And I know I'm showing this before, but just getting ready for my end of year list. Gave this skin a spin, and I still really love this thing. This product when it came out this year.
I need to get that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
it is
crushing.
Yeah,
crushing, man. So very, very excited. A week of listening here, and even though my record's got a boo boo,
Alan's got a tip there for you. You might want to try.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll look that up. Awesome.
It beats my suggestion of trying a heat gun.
Yeah. It's probably a rat parts fell in the vat.
Yeah.
Mouse chunks.
All right. TJ, what you been spinning?
Well, I haven't spun a whole bunch this week. I'm in the midst of a life upheaval. Again, I'm changing jobs. After 3 years, after 25 years previously, and it's just been a lot of stress and bullshit. And I've tried to get some stuff. I've still been kind of going through the stuff I did show you last week, some of it. But I got a copy of Sad Wings of Destiny. It's my favorite Priest record.
Good choice.
Yeah, I love this. I love this one. This is my favorite. And Jim, I did listen to this again this week. I just kind of can't get over it. This is a Brazilian death metal band called Rotborn. And I want you to check this out because I really think you're going to dig this. These guys fucking slay hard. They're
nice. ROTBORN? Rotborn? Like that?
Yeah, Rotborn. They just absolutely crush. And then on stuff I don't own that I was spinning on Spotify, Morphine, Cure for Pain, 93. And then Noxious Concoction, Ghoul's latest. And then, of course, it's that time of year, so Charlie Brown Christmas is getting a regular rotation. So, the jazz stuff is just absolutely killer. But, yeah, so other than that, that's kind of, and then I've listened to this multiple times. Digging this for sure, so.
Right on. Yeah, my listening has been this and this on Sunday, myself, S. Craig Zoller, and Melanie Loves Death Metal, we shot a 3-hour discussion regarding this album, Nile, The Underworld Awaits Us All. which I'm rendering as we are doing this stream. It's almost done. It'll upload. It'll be live tomorrow evening. So yeah, this is just a phenomenal record. That's
another one I got to get to.
Blown away how good this is. It really is. And I'm not going to get too far into it because we talk at length about it. So that's coming up tomorrow. If you haven't heard this record yet, wow, crushing. But that leads us to the debut album from Howling Sycamore. Get my notes up. The band started around 2018, and this album came out on Prosthetic Records. Features Jason McMaster, which, as Logan already pointed out, you might know from Watchtower, Spastic Ink, Dangerous Toys, Dirty Looks, and a bunch of other bands. He's been in a bunch of stuff, a bunch of different styles of metal as well. Davide Tiso on guitars, bass, and ukulele. I think it's a baritone ukulele. He was in Karyn Crisis Gospel of the Witches, and actually Karyn did lyrics on this album, track 7, Descent into Light. So interesting little guest spot here. And Hannes Grossmann, he's in Triptycon, was in Blotted Science, and a bunch of other bands as well. And a guy named Bruce Lamont on saxophone. It says on Metal Archives on tracks 1 and 2, but it seems like there's more of it than just on track 1 and 2. I don't think that information is correct, unless he's using the ukulele in a weird way. I don't know, but we'll get into all that later. But yeah, let's get into Howling Sycamore. We'll start with you, Logan. What are your initial thoughts on this one?
Oh, man. First impression was a little rough, honestly. Immediately, I was like, one of these things is not like the other. Something's got to give. The vocals from the first listen was just a clash in my mind. It just didn't seem to mesh with what the music and the instrumentation was doing. And then they would throw in the saxophone, which I agree. It certainly seems more prominent than just on 2 songs. They don't overuse it, but I feel like it's definitely more than 2. But yeah, with the vocals and the saxophone, and just I didn't get too much from the first spin through, to be fair. It just didn't feel like it was meshing, and it kind of all sounded unhinged, like the vocals were unhinged, and the music was kind of technically, it felt uncaring and kind of just left me feeling unsettled and not sure if I was interested in returning, So I listened to this right after you picked it, like the next morning, TJ, and I might have given it a day or 2 before returning to it. So we'll see what happens, I guess.
Kellen.
TJ is back and forth. That's the first thing
I told you guys to brace for impact. You think this one's good? Wait till you see what got lined up.
Okay, well, right. So immediately, doesn't take long. I think 30 seconds into the opening track, you hear his voice, Jason's voice, on top of. I think for me, it's not musically that challenging. It's just the mix of ingredients is kind of odd. So his voice comes in around 30 seconds or so in the opening track, and then the saxophone rolls in, and I'm like, man, we're a minute and a half into this first song. And TJ's first pig back, he's making an impact. So, but I think overall, once that shock settled, to me, it personally was a kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like a very melodic listen. I felt it was like a very melodic, sort of modern. I guess the guys playing guitar and bass here comes from kind of an avant-garde black metal background in Italy, I believe. But it felt to me like they could, if you pulled Jason's vocals out of this and the saxophone, it was like a modern black metal listen to me. So it's to Logan's point, it's jarring. I completely. You pull his voice out of this, I think they go on tour with like Garea or Uwada or something like that.
This everybody's come from a guy that thinks Beyond the Wandering Moon is a black metal record. So I mean, forgive me. I realized what I just.
The people have already decided how to feel about this. So I will no longer, tiptoe around this reality. Okay, moving on.
You charm them with your wiles and your good looks. That's why.
But
I lose. That's why I lose.
All right. Yeah. To me, it felt like a very comfortable sort of modern extreme metal listen. It's just Jason's vocals and the saxophone that I think are a little bit challenging when you throw them into the mix.
Jim.
First impressions, in a word, frustration. Because man, it starts out, upended. The first song starts out great. It's like cool riff, great drums, just hammering snare. Like, Jason's vocals are wild and crazy. And then the saxophone comes in. Oh my God, dude. Okay, man. There's only 2 times that I like to hear horns, and that is on Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. And when I'm listening to reggae, which if you live in Florida, you listen to reggae at least sometimes. That's the only times I can take horns, man. And dude, oh my God, I managed to make it through the first song. Like it's a little dissonant and out there, but man, the second song, Obstinate Place, I honestly, I only made it through that song one time, and I listened to this album several times, but I couldn't even make it through it like that. I don't know, man. It sounded like a dying, flatulating giraffe, screaming in agony. Like it was, I don't know what that was, but for me, that's not music. It's horrifying sound. But there's some really great moments on this record. So like, that's why frustration is the word for me, because so much potential, but just reaching too far. And there were other things I think reached too far too, which we'll get into, where I feel like, Jason's trying to sing too many words in one line or something like that. And I think I read that somebody else wrote the lyrics, which would totally make sense to me. Like, because they weren't his, maybe he was trying to push sometimes, especially on that song where it's just like real mellow and it's just his voice and a guitar, and, and he's trying to say like 10 words and it's like this really mellow vibe, but there's also some really amazing drum work on here, some really cool, interesting riffs, like, kind of a black and, a little bit of black metal, a little bit of death metal, lots of progressive. There's a lot of cool things here. We'll get into, what I think about the album as a whole, but yeah, it's a little all over the place, but hey, it's a pure TJ pick, and I'm glad to be challenged, and it's good stuff.
Yeah, for me, first impression, if the band Nevermore was a person, well, this person Nevermore would have a younger first cousin named Howling Sycamore, who went away to art school and got involved with some people and started hanging out with these avant-garde types, and then got around and made this record after their experiences over at art school, because there are moments on here between Jason's voice and some of the music I hear Nevermore at times. I know that's going to curdle people's milk when I say that, but I hear it, especially the way in McMaster's cadence, and I think it's on the second track, and the way he's singing along with the music. It just feels like that modern early 2000s type of century media band. But first impression, I do not like saxophone in Gothic music. Very infrequently do I hear saxophone and say, wow, that's great. And in metal, I'm even less thrilled with it, especially when they're trying to choke out a rabid goose. I mean, I hate that solo, John Zorn craziness. It's just, but I do like it when they are using it just as like another guitar line, which they do throughout this album at times. It's not offensive. It just seems like a weird. It's kind of organic sounding how they put it to use when he's soloing and doing all this crazy stuff. Oh, the sex! I already think I said his name. It's bonkers, and I hate it. I just hate it when that happens. But there's songs where it's not there, and you can kind of feel a hole. You know what I mean? And that hole can be good sometimes. Sometimes it's detrimental. But I don't know. This is an album. You know, I heard it for the first time. I shook my head. And I went, TJ. But the more I listened to it, you know, some Nevermore things started popping out, and I'm like, okay, this is an anchor. And I like Jason's voice on this. He's kind of being the consummate front man. I mean, he's a veteran. He's got decades of bands in his resume, and he's a great singer, and he puts fry in his voice in weird time. He's an odd singer, but a very, very good singer. And I think the colorization of his voice on this music is a bonus. It's much needed. But TJ, what do you think? Obviously you picked it.
Well, I stumbled on this just sifting through the BS that comes through my Spotify feed, and I saw the name, and I'm like, well, with a name like Smuckers, it has to be good. So, you know, I freaking turned it on, and initially my reaction wasn't that different from Logan's. I'm kind of like, starts out cool, and then he starts singing, and I'm like, you know, and I'm looking it up, trying to, figure out who this band is and stuff, and I'm just, like, I don't know, it's like, it seems a little off kilter. I don't know. And I'm listening to some, and then I kind of put it on the back burner for a while. And then I listened to it. I got a full listen in a couple of days later. And I was like, I really like this. And, there's some shit here. It's like, oh, God, saxophone. And like, cool, another saxophone band, And, and again, I can agree with you guys and so much, horns and stuff. They're not the first metal band to try it. And, and I think that, I think it's been used effective in other places, but the more I listened to this, the more I really kind of fell in love with this record. And I really, it all kind of, we'll get farther in, but, the more it started making sense, and the more I really started, getting a sense of how McMaster was cueing in his performances, and where it might seem like it's dissonant and out of place, but he's actually catching the tail end of the phrases where there's just this hint of melody, and he's managing to get his cues to end in these times and these spots, and the panic nature of it, and how desperate it is at times. And I think that's one of the things about this that really, one of the things I like the most about it is is his performance. His vocals on this, I pretend to be a singer sometimes with this band I'm in, and I'm inspired by a lot of these guys that are willing to have the balls to step outside of, the kind of normal vocal style and do something, adventurous or different, or to try to, and not be afraid to try to do that. And, and here, I see this whole band kind of trying to do something different. And I think they keep it. I don't know. We'll get farther. I don't want to we're diving too far off, but at first I was a little iffy, but then the more I listened, the more I got drawn in.
Right on. You got a topic for us?
Oh, you're gonna make me do it. So my question, and so avant-garde definition: innovative, pioneering, especially when extremely or obviously so. I posit Howling Sycamore as obviously such. And to that, when is it too much? Can there be a limit to what unrestrained creative hubris can give us? Is there a point when it's just trash, or is there always something to be gleaned from such adventurous artistry?
Logan.
Let me see. One sec.
There's some $5 words in that, by the way. Some $5 words.
There's some heavy bullshit in that one, boys.
Man, you don't get paid enough.
I'm making up for my lack of nothing on the last one. My blank paper.
Chemist, it's good.
Yep,
it's great. 10 out of 10. For your question, TJ, I hate to say it, but I really don't think there is a point where something is just trash, or is, there's not a definitive line where one, where an album can cross from being trash to artistry and back and forth. You know, I don't think it works like that. I don't think objectively there is a limit, as I was saying. Like excess for the sake of excess, I think is still an artistic statement and still has purpose, just as like noise for the sake of noise and being speedy and fast for the sake of being fast. Man, I just listened to grindcore for like a week straight, so I'm all game with just nonsense for the sake of nonsense. I think what does have a limit is subjective taste, and obviously that's different for each of us, and we all have a line in the sand where adventurous artistry turns into meandering trash that doesn't seem to have a point. I think there was an album, Marty, you brought up 2 weeks ago, a certain Death Row album, where you might give it to someone and they'd be like, what the hell is this? I'm not saying that was me, but maybe initially, yeah.
Yeah. But I wouldn't call that avant-garde. And thank you, Sheldon, for the super sticker. Appreciate you.
Ooh. You guys have super stickers?
I guess so. Oop, there it is.
That's what an upgrade. No, I mean, not avant-garde, but like technical, and I mean, kind of for like, what, 88 when it came out? It was pretty, I feel like it was pretty out there for a thrash band to sound like that. And honestly, to me, even Howling Sycamore doesn't sound that avant-garde. Like avant-garde really, it jumps around for the sake of jumping around, and Howling Sycamore finds a place that it wants to be, and it stays there. It's very tonally similar throughout its runtime.
Yeah.
Whereas avant-garde, we're just like, whoa, what the, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that Death Row album was more of a, whoa, like, just insane roller coaster ride than Howling Sycamore. I think the trick with Howling Sycamore is that initially the elements seem so far apart that you're like almost have cognitive dissonance about how to like listen to it, and it just takes a little bit of time. And I think for Howling Sycamore, I think there is definitely a lot of artistry here, and it's easier to identify than like some crazy, you know, technical death metal band which is just spitting out, you know, gobbledygook for the sake of it. Certain aspects of their sound is intentionally conveying deep emotions, and I think it's tougher to pick an emotional slant to albums which might have crossed a line, you know. So obviously, reiterating, this is definitely a personal taste thing, but from my perspective, Howling Sycamore is not in danger of being perceived as artistically devoid and trash. I think they do a very good job of having a point and a reason to their music, and it doesn't meander for the sake of it, and I think it sticks in a lane or finds a place and tries to create art within it.
Right on. Kellen.
Yeah, I just want to point out Frosty's. I think, you know, Celtic Frost is a great test case for this conversation for me. Starting with something that is very primitive, and it takes them a long time to get to monotheist. As you know, right? That band is a great example of one that took a lot of chances, did something that was very different, experimenting, and that was part of a creative process. So I don't think there's a line you can cross. I do think there is such a thing as poor execution in a concept. Right? The whole concept, I think, behind avant-garde or whatever you want to call it. We had a similar conversation surrounding Master's Hammer. I think the Master's Hammer album choice that was a bit out there. Another band that started sort of early black metal and went interesting places over the years. So no, I don't think there's a line that's too much. I think that's what makes music in general interesting, is when you take new ideas and you take chances and you push boundaries. And what someone calls avant-garde, you know, fast forward decades to come, is probably less so. Like Death Row might be an example of that, right? So I do think where it does come up short, or when there becomes problems, is when a band has not sort of realized a vision, or they don't know how to execute an idea. And I think we make those determinations and criticisms looking back, or in hindsight. It's like this is where they were trying to get, and it took them a while to get there. But I would never sort of dissuade or discourage any artist who's trying to venture into new places.
Jim.
Yeah, not much to add here. I mean, yeah, I totally agree. You know, there should never be any limits on artistic expression. There will be limits on how well I take it though as a listener.
Yeah.
When things like, when something that's ostensibly metal, like basically just has like a few riffs here on the album that could be metal, and then there's just all kinds of other instrumentation going on that don't really, classify into that realm, I'm likely not going to be very interested in it. And in this case, I do think this is absolutely a metal album there, and once I got past those 2 tracks, and really sad about the first one because I love that song until the sax comes in. But once, from 3 through 8, there is no sax, and then it's just a really cool progressive metal album, and I think it hits far more than it misses once you get away from that. So for me, it's just a matter of personal taste. The really only other album besides the things I mentioned earlier that I don't mind the saxophone on is Ihsahn's After. I don't mind John Zorn's playing on that one. For whatever reason, it just doesn't bother me on that record. And it's not like it's all over it. It's just in a couple songs or whatever. But I really like that record. But here I especially felt on Obstinate Place. It just really just ventured into the noise territory. I'm sure from a free improvisational jazz, the dissonance has some sort of musical place, but to me it just sounded like someone just mashing a bunch of buttons and making squealing sounds, and I'm not here for it. I don't listen to noise as in the genre. I don't. There has to be something for me musically to grasp onto. So to me, it was overbearing, but I wouldn't take that away from them doing that. If that's what they want to do, I just feel in this particular case that the album suffered for it, and as a whole, without that distraction, I think the album would have been much stronger if that had been just edited out. So.
All right. And, getting back to the whole Celtic Frost thing is the prime example. I'm going to reiterate on this. Into the Pandemonium, you got to start somewhere, and you can't just jump into an avant-garde headspace. You're taking a formula that you've established as Celtic Frost. We're going to do some kooky stuff here and call ourselves avant-garde. Just because you have a drum machine and a sample, or a poorly placed and bad cover, or changing your vocal style or some lady singing here and there, that album is a fail. That is the trash. That is the trash side of this journey. But you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, and they finally make their omelet on Monotheist. That album is finally an avant-garde, well composed from beginning to end statement. It maintains their core values, adds a bunch of new stuff in, tries some different things, isn't awkward. They figured it out, and they had to get through a lot of garbage to get there. I listened to this record, and I think there are avant-garde flourishes. Of course, the saxophone noise bursts are in that realm from that, the John Zorn experimental noise, jazz, whatever you want to call it, frame of reference. But at its core, the music is like Logan said, it achieves a certain vibe and feel and maintains it throughout the entirety of the album. So musically, the core, the foundation of it is not out there. It isn't really, what are they, 7-string, 8-string guitars? I don't know. I'm hearing a lower, they use them well. There's a warmth to it. I think the saxophone and some of their, and maybe Jason's vocal style, he has a way of making things a little more chaotic in a good way. I think it's cool when he's pushing it. He goes into a fry, half singing, half fry vocals and doing weird phrases, and it's cool, but he can also smooth it out. And I don't know. I think this is if we're going to call this an avant-garde record, I think they did for their first statement. It's a good record. It's a good record. Hasn't hit the trash bin. And they didn't overdo it, which is the good thing. What do you think, TJ?
Well, I think you guys are all kind of right on point with this. I think it's kind of a yes and a no for me. And even in that, it's like, I think that a band can get kind of lost in its pretense, trying so hard to be so much, to do so much. But even in that, we can gain from seeing that from the outside, and saying, that's the line, that's the place. Like, we don't want to be there. We don't want to do that. But ultimately, when it comes to just artistic freedom, I mean, you can't, if you're caging it or hindering it, then there's really no freedom to it. So you got to be able to express and do what you think is right. Doesn't mean everybody's going to salute it if you're running up the flagpole. But I think it can kind of go both ways. But ultimately, you're gonna reach for that elusive, place, and stylistic expression. You got to be able to do what you want, and I think the Celtic Frost example is an excellent point to make. Where they get from one extreme to the next, but it was baby steps, and
even that one unreleased rap demo they did, I can't have the tank on it. Oh my God, what
thankfully,
an absolute
thankfully, I never got to hear
abortion.
that. So
they were lost. They're just completely a band that was lost.
Cold Lake was an abortion, and there are people that still come back today. It wasn't so bad.
A lot of people. There's people come out of the woodwork that liked it. Yeah,
and it's just like, no, you're wrong. you're completely and utterly and epically incorrect. It's a piece of shit. But yeah. So no, I think I think there's a line in so much as we can stand out and see it for ourselves. But again, to the other commenter there, it's personal taste, too. So, yeah.
All right. Well, cool. Good way to get us rolling here. Let's talk about the musicality and composition of Howling Sycamore. Logan.
So, I know my first impression, I said that initially, like, the instrumentation and the music overall felt kind of cold and just unfeeling and just unsettling, and that's kind of what I initially walked away from it. I definitely warmed up to it on subsequent listens and actually really grew to find a lot of emotional depth in how they were playing the music, like going from it feeling cold and technical and kind of calculated, the music started to feel more desperate and sad and like someone or something clinging to life in a world of constant pain. Every instrument is kind of crying out in a sense, and McMaster, of course, being the lead screamer, really doing the fry screams and really crying out literally. The guitars kind of squeal and shriek too, and initially my impression was that they were super technical, but I think that was just like the shock of like trying to digest Howling Sycamore's sound. And the more you like get used to it, like I know by my third listen, I realized that a lot of the guitar lines, they're really just going back and forth on these like somewhat dissonant melodies. Like they're not doing all these crazy technical sweeps or anything. It's a lot of like drawn out melodies that are not really forming any riffs. They're just kind of creating like this atmosphere and like world building in a sense. They do get heavy when they want to, but for the most part, they are creating kind of like a backdrop for the squealing and the shrieking of other parties on this album. So I think the incorporation of the saxophone definitely adds to the unsettling and screeching feel of the music. I can like saxophone in metal. I'm not against it. And on this album, I go back and forth. I think initially I was definitely not a fan of it and thought it was too much, but as soon as I started to feel the music itself really trying to express just pain, the saxophone is just doing that. It's screeching out in pain, it seems like. And I think the saxophonist, as you mentioned Bruce Lamont. He's actually a member of the band Yakuza from Chicago. They do like a avant-garde post-metal kind of thing. So it was cool to see him featured.
Don't show that to TJ. It'll be on the damn channel. What are you doing right
TJ,
now?
it's like an hour long. You should check that out.
Oh, great. Perfect.
Where's my pen?
Sowing the seeds.
How do you spell that? VOIVOD.
So yeah, that the guitars and like the vocals and the saxophone really do all add up to like this just screeching emotive output from the band. And I think I don't really hear the ukulele at all. So there's supposed to be a ukulele, but I can't pick it out. So
There's some stuff going on here and there. It says baritone ukulele. I thought it was saxophone, but Metal Archive
Could
says
be.
that's only on the first 2 songs. I don't believe that's the truth. I don't believe it is. Anyway.
I thought on like the 3rd or 4th track there was some sax too. So
Yeah.
But as far as the drum performance here, I think Hannes Grossmann does a great job of adding to the frantic intensity of the album. And I mean, God, what an impressive, prolific drummer, and just he's someone I always enjoy listening to on an album. And I have to say, I haven't heard him on an album like this before, where really the vocal performance is kind of at the front, and he is still like overplaying everything, but it's not taking away from the vocal performance. And it's probably because Jason McMaster is doing so much. Which, to quickly speak on him, man, initially I did not like his performance here at all. And but after listening to more of McMaster's other bands, I realized that he has quite an impressive range. And like initially I thought he was maybe sounding the way he was because he's washed up. That's not the case. I was wrong. That was, he sounds great on that new Igniter album that literally just came out this year. Here he sounds like some kind of weird mishmash between like a thrash guy and a power metal vocalist who's just like blowing out his voice at the concert the other night or something. And he's just giving it his all. And I think everything adds up to create this very emotionally raw album that it kind of starts to feel like a concept album the more I get into it and the more I listen to it. And I think it helps me appreciate it more. It has a tone that I said before kind of carries the whole album, and it really starts to mesh. I initially was like, it doesn't mesh at all, but now I'm like, it does. It meshes perfectly. I am starting to feel a bit of a thematic kind of concept album nature with it. And it starts with a blistering opening. There's a more subdued middle section before finally all crashing down, with the Descent to Light track. And I think the vocals by McMaster do a lot to carry the emotional weight from going from more melodic to those fry screams and like howls that he does. There's a lot of emotional weight to this album, and it was a cool one to unpack for sure.
Cool. Kellen.
So I really think we're overstating the presence of the saxophone on this album. It's really the first 2 tracks when it feels like the John Zorn thing is all over the place. To your point, Marty, the 3rd track, I want to say Let Fall.
That's one of my favorites on the album, actually.
It feels like the saxophone, I hear it on that song, but it's so much, by comparison, it's reserved, right? It's just
like another guitar part.
I don't hear it at all in that song. And
maybe
if
that's
I did, I would hate it, but I like that one. So I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It's not the John Zorn thing. It's like just kind of filling in some space there on the bottom end of this song. I agree with Logan. So Jason's vocal performance reminded me of like, it just completely shifts. There's not enough sort of busyness going on underneath to distract you from Jason's performance. It feels like when I could listen to anything that Mike Patton's on, and it's like all my attention goes to Mike Patton whenever he steps to the mic, being like a consummate frontman. And I totally agree with sort of Logan's, his performative quality on this record is really difficult to sort of corner into a specific genre. It feels like to some degree he really has a lot of freedom to kind of go off and do his own thing. And if you look at these musicians, they're all coming from kind of adventurous projects, you know, Watchtower. We've already talked about David, or I don't know how we pronounce his name, his sort of avant-garde experimental black metal projects. And Hannes Grossmann's coming, you know, I associate him with the tech death scene in Germany happening in the 2000s. So all of them have these really sort of prodigious backgrounds in terms of musicianship, and this seems like a collaborative effort where they were just kind of given a lot of freedom to go and do their own thing. So I don't mind the horns, but for me, musically, the guitars are relatively simple on this record, in my opinion. And and we'll get to production. Like, I very much felt like the bass is almost an afterthought relative to the rest of the performance.
I didn't even really hear it. I didn't pay any attention to it.
Yeah, it's, and the riffs, it's not really a riff record. It's the kind of these single note sort of guitar melodies that sit on top of the riffs. And that's like the guiding principle to their songwriting style. But you have this tech death drummer underneath it doing his thing, and a vocalist who's on one throughout this record. And you remove like the first two sort of wild, busy saxophone. I just kind of felt it was like an interesting, hard to categorize extreme metal listen. I think as it's listed on Metal Archives, it's probably the best way to describe it.
Jim.
You know, musicality and composition, right? You know, obviously these guys know what they're doing. They're obviously talented players. They come from bands that are all, you know, progressive and envelope pushing bands. In Jason's case, Watchtower, one of the originators, at least in the thrash metal scene, to really create something that was progressive. You know, Hans drums, you know, he's in Triptycon as well, which is my familiarity with him. A great player. You know, you know, when you look at Metal Archives, you know, you can kind of see that they all recorded all, and this isn't unusual nowadays, but, you know, they all recorded their own parts in their own little corners of the world. But I think that, you know, that maybe the more progressive elements, you know, vis-a-vis the horns would have made a little bit more sense if they'd been in a room together, you know, and, you know, kind of had that, what's all too familiar for musicians, you know, for, you know, that have been in, you know, bands that play in a room together, like myself, Marty, and TJ, you know, where you kind of argue with one another and you edit as a result, you know. And I think that a little bit of being in the same room together and spitting out some of that, you know, cacophonous sound, somebody would have said, you know, maybe we try another take on that. But when you're just like, you know, sent something that's recorded, and then you're just like, you're just going to play over it for a minute and then just send it back, or even if you send it back and forth a couple of times, maybe, you know, your ability to, you know, jump on something, you know, is diminished somewhat. And I think that may have been what happened here. You know, I do hear what you're saying, Kellen and Marty. I do think, Marty, you're right. You know, some of these riffs kind of have that early 2000s Nevermore tuned down kind of a feel. And Kellen, you're right. The riffs, you know, the heavier riffs are relatively simple, you know, and so, and where the progression comes in is for guitars, at least, is the arrangements, you know, when they're jumping down on the acoustic parts, the really cool, very unique sounding acoustic parts. And that's where that baritone ukulele comes in. I think it's on, Chant of Stillness is where that one's on. And you know, it sounds really cool. And like the bass player, even though it's kind of, and him being a guitar player first and foremost, you know, I can see why he didn't push it up into the mix, but it is there. It's more like you feel it rather than hear it. But he does some really cool bass lines on the other, the intermezzo instrumental. That's really bass heavy on that one. And he doesn't go shred-tastic, but he does some very interesting stuff on the bass guitar there. So all of that kind of works. And for me, I only hear the sax on the first two songs. Like I said a second ago, like I like Let Fall. If I had heard the saxophone, I don't think I'd like it.
There is some sax on it. I wrote it in my notes too.
Yeah. I think you guys are wrong. I think it's guitar, but
it could be something else. I don't know. Maybe
I like have gone back multiple times. Like that is not a guitar, right? It's just. But to your point, it feels so like reserved, right? It's you have to peer into the mix to hear it.
And if that was the approach throughout, with its implementation, I think I would have been incredibly more tolerant of it, because riff wise and arrangement wise, and upended that opening track, and also drums. It's one of the best drum performances on the album. It's certainly one of the more interesting riffs on that. I was like, I'm hearing a little bit of black metal. I'm hearing a little bit of death metal. The arrangements here were complex, and then I was just completely turned off, and I'm still able to make it through that one, but number 2 is just obstinate place. I literally can't even make it through that one. That one's just I
that's not a favorite of mine on the album either. I agree with you there.
But but sticking to the topic here, musicality, composition, these guys are extremely talented. It's cool to hear, what they're coming up with when they're sort of maybe unchained from like their, main bands, if you will, but I feel that like maybe a little more of a cohesive factor for the individual contributions would have been gelled a little bit better if maybe they had been in the same room. That's just my opinion. So.
TJ.
Well, I don't know. I mean, my take on this is so completely different. And, I think that for a band that's reaching for angular ideas, they keep it really close to the rails, and I think that's what kind of gives it the kind of accessible feel that you guys are kind of alluding to. It's like, I bring up Avant-garde. It's like this. I mean, it has its moments, obviously, but they stray in and out of that. But they still, they keep. There's a kind of a center. I think, I like the riff work on this record. I mean, they're not. There's nothing. There's no. It's not Portal. But they're wait till the new one comes out, whenever that happens. But we'll be doing that one too. But I like what they do, because I they really build on the ideas and stuff, and there's moments that really shine. What the hell's at the beginning? Well, Let Fall, a great record. I love the opening of that song. There's kind of this chorded riff that they do. I don't know. But but it's far out of left field as they go with it. The riffs still draw you in. You can still grab a hold of these songs. And for the saxophone and stuff, I remember back in the day, the first time I heard keyboards in metal, and I spit. Like, this is dumb. And then Nocturnus did their thing, and I like the one song on that record. I never did get into that record as a whole, but Lake of Fire is a great song. But that took me a long time to accept that. And then hearing horns, I accept it in terms of what they're trying to accomplish with it. And me and Marty were talking, and it's like, I think they could have achieved a lot of what they did do with the horns on this with just guitar leads and guitar stuff. But I think it's cool that they wanted to try something different, and to me, it's effective. I can see Jim's. I figured that was probably going to be the one thing that threw Jim on this overall, because I am, like Marty's talking about the Nevermore stuff, and I was like, I was hearing that too,
especially when Jason bows to it.
Yeah, he does. Sure.
He sings he sounds like World Dane.
There are moments where
that mid-range World Dane, the way he his cadence, the way he's phrasing the words. I'm like, wow, it kind of sounds like World Dane right here, big time.
He definitely conjures that, but that's one I think was like, there are moments when like the songs want to try to shake you, but then you can still kind of grab on, and I think that's really cool. And then as you move through the record, you get into kind of the middle of the record, and then it kind of levels out, and it becomes a little even more kind of less progressive and a little bit more even keeled. but the one thing I really, for me, I mean, I love when I finally connected with with the singing on this, and it was like Logan said, the kind of desperate, depressive, kind of sullen performance that he gives throughout this entire record. There feels like a theme.
I was going to say the same thing. This feels like a concept record.
There's some of the, and the lyrics on this there's some really, really great lyrics on this. Just very interesting lines that they come up with. They mentioned Sycamore. You mentioned Sycamore at least once. It's I found it to be obstinate pace. Thoughts are blades on a frozen lake. Let them glide out of me like a messenger of nothing. With a spider behind my ear, with a sycamore branches in my hands, with old silence in my heart. That line right there, I was like, fuck, that's a really cool line. I was like, man, anyway. I just think that his voice and his vocal performances is kind of the perfect foil to the music that they're trying to do. You've got them really trying to, this down-tuned guitars, this really extreme kind of drumming and everything. And then he's over there belting out these just really powerful and emotive lines. And the play against one another on that, to me, it just, after repeated listens, I was just really kind of blown away by it. I just think it's really great. And he, where at first, the first cursory listens of it, it's like, it feels like he's out of place and it's all kind of whatever. But then you start catching on and you're like, oh man, he's actually tying, the end of his vocal phrase in at the end of that guitar line, and he's catching just that hint of the key that they're in, and he brings it all together, and it's just like, shit, man, that was epic. The guy is just super talented, and I mean, I had no idea it was in all these other bands. I know the Watchtower and
it was a bunch. You can go on Metal Archives and look it up.
Dangerous Toys, and Dangerous Toys. I want to check out that Igniter. That looks like that might be cool. But yeah, there's a dissonance here, and an effect with the guitars and stuff. I just think the performance and overall, I think it just shines. The band, and I agree with Jim too. It's like I didn't know, I didn't dig that deep into the stats on this. So, they were in their own corner of the world, delivering their parts and then slapping it together wherever. And there is something to be said with being in a room together. I've tried myself on a personal level to work remotely with other people, and I've just never been able to, for whatever reason, I've never really been able to kind of stick to it, where these guys do, obviously, but it's just hard for me to work in that environment, or even on my own, writing by myself and stuff. Never trust the polls.
That's true.
Yeah, that's for sure. And so it's I think I've been
people
listening.
have better PR campaigns than others. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I've been listening to the second one, and that one definitely it feels less disjointed than this one does. I don't know. I've only gotten like 2 tracks into it, but I don't know if there's any saxophone on that one yet. But otherwise, I'm not offended by this.
There is a couple have popped up in my Spotify feed, and it is there is.
Yeah, but I'm not offended by the saxophone. I think it's cool. I applaud their efforts for trying it. I think it works. It is unnerving at first because you're just so not used to hearing that shit in a metal song. And then it comes up and it's just like, but then, I like a lot of stuff with horns, and it, like, again, I know it pushed me into listening to Morphine this week. And that's, I hadn't actually listened to that band in forever, and I don't like all their stuff, but they got, I like Cure for Pain was cool. But, so I don't know. I think the musicality on this is great. The inventiveness, and they're trying. I feel like they're kind of achieving what they're setting out to do. I think again it's their first effort, and they're real talented guys. So it was probably not as hard as it might have been for a younger band or a less experienced bunch of guys. And I you know, and I think the songs are really well put together. So Jim's wrong.
Well,
I get that a lot.
Yeah, me too. Trying to start off scrutinizing this album track for track. You know, I start picking apart little, you know, like a mini instrumental and little segues in between songs. And really, the best way to take this for me is a whole. And I think the composition of it is really well done. I think the music underneath it's got its good organic heavy. You know, Logan was mentioning cold. I don't get cold. There's a warmth to the guitars. The saxophone, when it's not squawking and stuff, it has a warm, organic feel to it. And listening to this, I got to thinking, is this a concept record about someone losing their mind or trying to hold it together? Because this isn't a air guitar album. You're not going to be like, oh, there's that riff. Oh, yeah, I'm doing this. You're not doing that. It's more of the foundation of this album lays down a vibe, and Jason is the one out front trying to, it sounds like someone going through trying to manage their sanity as this song on this album is. You know, sometimes he's calm, he's serene, he's singing really in key and perfect, and then there's times where he's, you know, trying to keep it together. You know, his voice is fluctuating, there's a chaotic element to it. It doesn't sound burnt out at all to me. He sounds like he's actually very much in control of what he's doing, and I think that's awesome. I think his voice is probably the highlight of this album for me, anyway. So yeah, if I take it as a solid piece and a concept, I think the album is really well done. I don't love all of it, but I think, you know, the journey is worth the time spent. Yeah. So as far as, you know, musicality and composition, the musicality is great. Everybody's doing well. The riffs aren't necessarily flashy. The drum work is great. I like the drum tone. It doesn't sound all clicked out. It's got there's a warmth, an ambience to it, which is very cool. Especially when he's blasting.
So agree, Marty.
Yeah. When he's blasting, it's not like click, 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 click. It's like, it feels like you're standing next to his kit, you know, and he's got a nice kit. It's just, yeah, let's talk about the production. Logan.
All right. Yeah, production. I think me kind of saying it feels cold was kind of just like my initial, you know, focus with it.
Alienating.
Yeah. There was just a certain uneasiness to it. I do think, I don't know. I still feel like the production doesn't feel super warm. There's a lot of depth to it, and though the music, as I said, it's initially feels quite crowded, the production does let you, like, you know, find your way through it and kind of layer it quite well. Like, obviously McMaster's like front and center. Like, he is such like a Tasmanian devil of energy here that it kind of takes away from the other instruments initially, but then when you do start to dive in, you can hear like the drumming is phenomenal, and I absolutely agree. The production for the drum performance is top notch. Like, when he does those like snare rolls that are really like building the song, it's, you know, you can really hear every single hit. And then when he gets that rolling double bass going, it does a lot to it. It really sounds like not like a constant, but there's like a certain flow to how he's playing the double bass on some of these tracks that helps it unfold. I think the guitars are also perfectly balanced here. They, you know, are really more, as I said earlier, more for world building. They're weaving dissonant melodies that kind of expand the atmosphere a little bit. And I think outside of the vocal performance, that's the other highlight, you know, that just dissonant backdrop of the guitars. And then they do get heavy at times, and they do create like these heavy riffs, but they're not like, I don't know, like it's like the overdrive isn't on it. Like it's like it feels down tuned, but they don't have the same bite. And I think it's an intentional way for, you know, not to become the centerpiece of the music and to take away from what the vocals are doing. And I kind of admire it a little bit, because it's something that you have to pay a little extra attention to when like the guitars really do create these heavy riffs. So overall, none of the instruments besides McMaster's vocal performance overpower the music. And I do really like the production. I am kind of with the whole, I don't hear the bass, but it seems like it's certainly not trying to be the focal point.
Yeah, it's not a focal point for sure.
I guess it's neither a good nor a bad thing, but I feel like it could have been up maybe just a little bit more in the mix. But I do like the production overall on this, and I think it helps with the cohesive feeling of this album and really the concept that this album is kind of leaving me with.
Right on. Kellen. You're muted.
Boom. Drum production is awesome. I love the drum sounding. And I was worried coming from, because I'm not a big Necrophagist and Obscura fan, so I thought that would potentially be a detraction, but Grossmann's drumming production, the sound is great. All good. I just don't think the guitar and bass work, there's not a lot of differentiation between the two of them. So the riffing is kind of blended together there in a certain way for me. I very much believe this is a Jason out in front doing his thing kind of record. That's sonically where the greatest strength is. I think the greatest personality to this project is in his vocal performance. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, the other musicians were sort of excited to work with him, and this was sort of a ground for him to do his thing. So production wise, I think that's where all the focus is. Despite Grossmann's tremendous performance on this record, I think your attention is going to be ultimately driven towards the vocal sound on this album. Don't have any necessarily complaints about the production to the guitar bass. I mean, there's just not clarity between the two of them. So most of the riffs on this are just melded together in my opinion.
All right, Jim.
Production. Like I said, it's like I totally agree with you about the drums, Marty. I think the drums are the best sounding instrument on this album. I really love. There's a good boxiness to that snare, and it's up there. It cuts through really well, but it doesn't like clang. You know, this is no Saint Anger. It's got that good boxy metal sound. You know,
imagine if that Saint Anger snare was on everything. Could you imagine?
I wouldn't have made it 15 seconds into this record if it had. And I like the kick sound. You know, they have a higher hit, but yeah, it doesn't sound triggered. It still sounds natural to me. So just a really great drum sound overall, and it really carries the album. Guitars, agreed as well. Again, I think they're warm sounding, which of course is aided by the fact that it's, you know, they're probably playing on a 7-string. It has a very low tonality throughout. The bass definitely could come up more on this, and you know it's there. I already mentioned you kind of feel it rather than hear it, other than the instrumental. But I think that's just it's not an atypical byproduct of the guitar player playing both instruments in the studio, which is the case here. Jason's vocals, I kind of like where they sit in the mix. You know, I mean, the guy's got a story history in metal, you know, ups and downs depending on what your point of view of Dangerous Toys is. Obviously, Watchtower, high watermark, you know, incredible band, incredible recordings. And I love the fact that Jason's still in it, and you know, and sounding as good as he does, pulling things off as well as he does. He's got a great vocal, and you know, on which one is it? My bad here. On Midway, when he says, you know, when he's singing "Slit My Eyes Open." First of all, what a great line! You know, I love that. Just slit my eyes open. It's just so brutal. It sticks out, and the way that he delivers that line is with a lot of power. It's a high water moment on the album for me. I really think that he delivers it well. And where he sits in the mix, production wise, and with the sort of beefiness that they give his vocal track, it pushes that further into your brain, great lines like that and other ones that TJ alluded to earlier. So whoever wrote the lyrics, it is the guitar player. I just see now, the guy is a great lyricist. He's a great songwriter. I think that if they'd been in the same room together, maybe Jason would have had the opportunity to say, you know what, this is a great line, but there's, for this one verse here, I've got so many seconds and I think it's too many words, and maybe we could do a little bit of editing here, because his vocals do sound rushed to me on some lines where he's trying to make sure that he says everything that maybe is on the paper. And I think that sort of unnatural feel from trying to get all of that out would have gone away with a little bit of like cutting back. But that said, the lyrics are really great and memorable. So yeah, all in all, the production of this record, certainly it serves the purpose of the album. It is not distracting in any way, unlike the saxophone.
Right on. TJ.
Yeah, so I love the production on this. I like how they could have easily gone with a really modern, slick production on this, and instead they really kept, it's sharp, but it's still warm, and it breathes, and everything. The bass is locked into the guitar, and it would be cool if he was doing, if he was more of a virtuoso player and whatever, if it shined a little bit better. That we always tend to enjoy that more so when we can kind of discern those things. But I just think overall, I think they made really good choices, really smart choices with it, and everything just really shines right. It's just got a really nice classic production sound. Super clean and super tight is always cool in certain things and what have you. But otherwise, I have no complaints about this. I think you guys are all kind of on the mark with it. The drums sound great. The guitars and everything shines. His voice, it's like, I think it projects like it's up more than it, but I really, like Jim said, I think that his voice is kind of right where it needs to be. I really don't have much to add to that. I really, really, really enjoy the production on this for sure.
Yep. I like the sound. I think it's got a fairly organic warmth to it, and everything sits well. The bass, I don't think the bass is a focal point on this album. It could have been, but it's not. Because honestly, you take that saxophone, not the squonking, goose honking stuff, but where he's actually like trying to mimic a guitar line or a guitar harmony line. You take that away, there's a hole. There's some of these songs have moments where it's kind of like, okay, what's maybe a little too minimal here. But other than that, I think the production is good. Perfect, really, for what this is. Least favorite songs, Logan.
All right. So I definitely grew to honestly enjoy every song on this album. There's not one that I think is a step down. Even track 2. I I enjoy the saxophone on track 2. That, like, I feel like it's actually more visceral on the first song to me. Like more like a goose honking or being run over or whatever you want to call it. I think every single song kind of plays into the album as a whole. And as I said, I am like buying that it's a concept album for sure. Like there seems to be a theme heavily running through of like this person's identifying with themselves as this dying sycamore tree. And I think it's like something that is clinging to life and not willing to let go, and all the hardship that kind of comes with not wanting to pass on to whatever comes next. And that's just like the tone I get from this music. It's like desperate and sad, kind of angry, but kind of scared at the same time. It's a interesting feel and a kind of a cool vibe. I mean, one that I wouldn't want to, I'm not going to revisit all the time, but cool nonetheless. So I will say, I do enjoy every song. My two favorites and the ones that actually made this album click for me are the ones in the middle. It's saxophone squonking. There's that on this album for sure. But the middle tracks, Midway and Chant of Stillness, was what made this album kind of click with me. There is a certain emotional punch to these songs that made this album just kind of snap into focus. I was able to pay attention to the lyrics. The music itself kind of opened up a little bit, and just felt a bit more atmospheric and lent itself to just those emotions I was describing earlier. I think the lyrics on Midway especially kind of hit the nail on the head for this album. I breathe in life, I breathe out death, and in that midway I stay. That just seems like whatever this entity is that's going through this poor Howling Sycamore, that's, I don't know what it's experiencing. And it makes, I used to work in healthcare. I know, TJ, you do or did, or I know you're going to do. I've seen a bunch of people in, situations like that, a bunch of suffering people whose quality of life is essentially non-existent. Are they living? Who knows? Chant of Stillness, I think, benefits from how quiet it is and the slow plodding guitar kind of leading the way. And it just allows it to build this tension while still feeling at peace. And it progresses kind of beautifully. And I like McMaster's vocals on this as the guitar kind of just continues to build tension with like these chords that it just, cleanly runs behind. And it sounds like a song of acceptance kind of in a sea of denial. But those two tracks are my favorite. But as I said, no tracks are something that I dislike here. So I don't know. I really grew to enjoy it.
Right on. Kellen.
Yeah, to some degree, I'm with Logan here. Like, I don't know if there's any major misstep on this record, like one that screams. It's a very concise album. Really, you have two instrumentals with Intermezzo and the closer Dysphoria. Mm-hmm. And Chant of Stillness is like an acoustic, sort of slow little, almost like an interlude. So while there are some songs like Upended and Obstinate Pace that was like a shock to the system when I first heard it, I didn't have any issues with them. I kind of feel that was like, okay, here we're going to get the hard songs out of the more avant-garde, if you will, songs out of the way. And then you kind of settle in. So I actually, to some degree, like, this isn't like a perfect record, in my opinion, but there are really no major missteps for what this band is going for. My favorite song though is Descent to Light. That song opens with Grossmann doing this sort of Marshall snare build. And for the first portion of that track, like, it just progressively, he goes off on the drums to start that song. And I think it's a great way to really close this record. Dysphoria is this sort of small little outro there. I don't mind it as the last track, but if I'm going to pick one that I thought was like their best realized effort, it's going to be the second to last track, Descent to Light.
Right on. Jim.
Do you want to hear worst first or best first?
Go for it. Whatever.
We'll get the bad news out of the way. As I've already mentioned, Obstinate Place. I just think it's absolutely unlistenable. I mean, this is, I can't make it through it. It's just complete and utter noise to me. And it's a shame because there's some really great moments on this record. The saxophone just absolutely destroys this song for me. And, even though there's like some good riffs at the beginning, it's just, I listened to it 1.5 times and never listened to it again. Upended, it's a 50-50. It starts out great. It's killer. It's crushing, great riffs, great drums, great vocal, and then the sax. And so another one that high potential, leaving me frustrated. So the good news, Midway is just a great song, man. Great riffs, more melodicism here. There's atmospheric layering of the instruments on the verses of the song. Some of the best lyrics on the album. I already alluded to, Slit My Eyes Open, and Logan also mentioned great lyrics about that track. I do absolutely love this song. I think it's a highlight of the album, and it is definitely my favorite. Others, I agree with Kellen. Descent into Light is great. I think it's one of the better vocal performances on the album. I think Jason really comes into his own here. I think some of the best drum performances on the album are on Descent into Light. Again, agreeing with Kellen's amazing playing. The main riff itself, like, it seems kind of simple, but it's almost like it kind of reminds me of like Chaos AD, but like with more color and more warmth in terms of like the main riff, and just really great blasting on the chorus too. So all the way around, Descent into Light, another excellent song. Let Fall, probably one of the more melodic, or the most melodic out of the ones that I like on the record. Has a really cool, interesting, not like noodly, but just well phrased guitar solo at the beginning of it, and just all the way through it. Like, it just has a very good vibe. And after like the, unnerving, ear piercing insanity of Obstinate Place before it, it's a very calming, denouement, if you will, into that song. So I really like that one. On Dysphoria, the little instrumental at the end, I was reading up, and it says like different drummer on it. I noticed like something's weird. All it is just kind of like this sort of like marching band snare thing, and it says that it's the guy from Skin Lab on it. So
there's a blast from the past.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the
good old Century Media days, that metalcore type stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was a strange sort of inclusion there.
I think they were on.
It's kind of like a throwaway thing to me. But yeah, the highlights on here. Again, I think if you don't listen to any other song on the album, Midway is the song to check out. Descent in the Light, a close second, and Let Fall is great. And just fast forward the first two tracks.
All right, Teach, favorite, least favorite.
Let's see. No particular order. I don't. With Kellen, I like all of it. I don't think there's anything. I have nothing to dislike. I have standouts for me. Let's see, where are we at here? Descent into Light, Upended, Obstinate Pace, Let Fall. Let Fall is really cool. It's kind of got a doom middle. I love the opening of that track. What the hell? Track one, Descent into Light. The unhinged guitar riff, desperate vocals. I love the sax. I think it's just kind of crazy and out there, and just adds to the overall vibe of the song. The blasting, the clean section in the middle is really cool. Let's see, what is it? Yeah, what did I say? Obstinate Pace. Yeah, I think it's one of the more melodic performances on there. I love the double bass work in the track. I think this record is absolutely killer. So I don't have any real complaints about tracks, but that's kind of my standouts.
All right. Yeah, for me, I think probably the opening track, Upended, is the most exciting song on the album, which, I mean, McMaster's vocals right away. The mission statement is established. He's a consummate frontman, 100%. Precision blast work is great. The saxophone, not a fan of the squawking stuff. Obstinate Pace, in spite of some blast beats at the beginning, the song feels far more subdued than the opener. Then 2 minutes point, then onward, Jason sounds like he's channeling World Dane. Similar tone in his voice, similar mood, similar cadence and phrasing. The music sits within that modern early 2000s vibe as well. I mean, it's a decent but a sluggish track. Let Fall is the favorite on here. The sax is used remarkably well in this track, if it is indeed sax. They kind of use it like a layered guitar line with more of an earthy tone. It gives it more of an earthly tone. And again, I mentioned earlier, honestly, if they didn't have the sax on here, the song would be seriously lacking. There'd be a hole. Sax and Jason's vocal lines are the definite standout traits, where the guitars are simply a meaty foundation for everything to sit upon. I really like the emotion on this one. They get it right, and it's a sound that can be called truly their own, I think. Intermezzo, just a brief, moody instrumental. Midway, the band at this point has kind of settled on a mid-pace tempo. It kind of permeates this album a bit. It's a pace that's heavy and gives Jason a lot of room to embellish the music, but it feels a bit lethargic until that shift towards the end where the music kind of falls away and Jason sings the lines, show me the mountain I walked away from, bring me the forest that I'm afraid of. I mean, and he doubles it. There's like a doubled vocal, like a vocal harmony line. It's like an a cappella part. But then when the music kicks in after that, it's just a quicker pace. It comes back in, the brief blast and fantastic twin lead guitar work. A lot of color comes into this track. The song ends really well. Least favorite, Chant of Stillness, minimal clean guitar line over a chord progression off in the background. There's no percussion on it. It's a moody piece, but I was glad when it ended. Descent into Light's probably my favorite on here. I like the quicker tracks on this album, actually. They had a bit more tension. This one has a lot of interesting twists and turns. I think it's a saxophone on here. It may not be. Again, I'm flustered by the Metal Archives information. It's atypical. If it is a guitar, it's atypical and cool sound. It gives the band even more to call their own, but some of the lyrics here feel a bit crammed in, but the forced cadence suits the power and interesting power, the interesting inflections in Jason's voice. He seems to excel in awkward moments like this, and I think this is the one where Karyn Crisis did the lyrics for it. So, I mean, she probably wrote the lyrics, gave him the lyrics, said, here you go, here's some lyrics. He's like, well, how do I... So he just started cramming them in, but he somehow made it work. And then it closes on that under 3 minute Dysphoria intro or instrumental. I like the way it ends. It's very moody. Kind of takes you out on a wave of melancholy. I think it works. And really from start to finish, scrutinizing the tracks individually, which I had to do here, I think it's better just to kind of take it as a whole piece and not really think about the little chunks. Because if you sit there and start looking, what's this instrumental? There's no percussion. It means nothing. It's just a bump on the way to the next song. But if you take it as a whole, it all kind of interlocks and it works as a concept from beginning to end. Judgment, final thoughts, Logan.
Yeah, so this was a journey to find this album and slowly unpack it. And honestly, it really wasn't that slow. It took about probably 2 or 3 listens. It was just after that first listen, I was like, all right, I need a day or two off from this thing. But when I finally got back to it and was really diving in, it was exciting to digest. I didn't know if I was going to end up liking it or if it was just never going to click. But yeah, it definitely clicked. And for me, Howling Sycamore succeeds because of its ability on this album to tap into an emotional nerve and be engaging while doing so. I think the music is technically impressive, but not overpowering. And there are countless cool moments within the instrumentation on here. Every single performer, you can tell, is top notch. And I think when you combine that with Jason McMaster's vocal performance, everything just feels very real and raw. Like this is an album that I'm actually able to take something away from. I think a feeling of desperation, sadness, and like the certain inevitability that comes with just living and aging. I don't know if that's actually what this album is about. As I said, I don't actually even know if this is a concept album, but that is just that's just what I'm left with at the end of the day, from traversing this landscape. So I think an album that can leave like an emotional impact on you is important. And definitely a good reason to listen. And it can't be sick riffs all the time. There's got to be other stuff too. So, is this a perfect album? No. Is it something that I will revisit on a daily commute or try to like show to the metal brethren and be like, guys, check this out? This is sick and nasty. Probably not often, but I think this is a album that when you pull it out, it's kind of a personal listening experience. It's, you listen to it with a purpose in mind. You want to get a certain vibe out of the music. And I think, all these really well-established players succeed with this album. And I would chalk this up to a heavy metallurgy success. And I definitely want to pick this up. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. So good pull, TJ. Yeah.
Big turnaround from the beginning.
Big turnaround. Yep.
Wow, we haven't got to Logan with anything that he hates yet. This is a good sign.
I got to work on it.
Right on. Well, we got to work on it apparently. Kellen.
Yep. Cool record, band that avoids easy classification. When TJ's like, it's Howling Sycamore, I was like, what in the world?
What is up with that name?
What is a Howling?
That is exactly why I spun it.
Right. It's like, oh yeah, have you heard Howling Sycamore? Absolutely not. What are you talking about? But
rolls off the tongue.
Yeah. Oh yeah, great stuff.
But yeah, it was a really cool listen. Obviously, once you learn about all the different members involved, that kind of gives you a little bit of cachet. But it was a band that I think has tons of individual personality, right? Like, there's not a lot of other bands that can really replicate what's going on here. And if I were to see this out in the wild, absolutely, I'd pick it up.
Right on, Jim.
You guys are on crack.
Whatever, dummy.
No. I did not hate this actually. When you get past the first two tracks, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. The drum performances. I love Jason McMaster's vocals. Even if he was trying to squeeze in too many words here and there, the performance itself, the style of his vocals, his range. I've always liked it. I still do. With that vibrato, he's got a little bit of grittiness too. So, there's always some edge there. The riffs are very interesting. The solos are interesting. The bass player, when you can hear it, is interesting. It's just, the inclusion of, something that, should only be in a George Michael single on the first two tracks was too overwhelming for me. So, the fact that, I can't make it through the first two tracks. I can't give this like a high rating, you know what I mean? Which is, again, it goes back to my first comment at the start of the night, frustration, because had that not been the case, it would get a higher rating for me because I don't hate this really. But I do really dislike the sound of the saxophone. So for me, it's a 6.5. That's as much as I can give it. And it would have been more, but nah, it was for me, a stylistic choice that didn't pay off. So, but it's still worth a listen. And I absolutely think it's a pure TJ pick, and it's good to be challenged. We shouldn't always just listen to things that they cater to our likes, even though my picks are usually that way. And again, Midway is just a great song, man. Lyrically, structurally, guitar playing, drum wise, vocally, that song stands out in song, man. So tell them to come back and write a song like that, but like 8 times.
All right, I'll let TJ finish it. But for me, I think it's a good record. The first listen, I didn't hate it. And the more I spun it, the more I liked it. I really, again, like Jason's performance on here. I think the whole album as a whole is good. It's just not something that's, I don't want to say it's not my wheelhouse, because I get it. I get what's going on here. But, Nevermore is a band that I like as well, and I rarely ever listen to them. It's just not a band that I'm in the mood for. When I am, it hits. It's great. But, yeah, I have to look at this and grade it on, am I going to go out and buy this? Probably not going to go out and buy this. So, for me, it's a 7.5. I think it's a good record. if I were to spend more time with it, I'd probably like it more and more and more. You know, if I found it used in a bin, I would probably get it. But am I going to go out hunting for it? Probably not. I am interested to check out the few tracks I heard off the second album are good as well. Again, the saxophone is still there, so Jim, be careful. But yeah, it's a good band. I think it's a good pick. A good, interesting discussion for sure. TJ.
Yeah, for me, the record's a 9. I absolutely fell in love with this record. I think this band is great. You know, and the saxophone was a lesson to be learned for me on this too, because I like horns. Horns in metal is not something you hear all the time, but it finally kind of coalesced with me. I absolutely think it's great. It's not, and I'm glad that it's just kind of, hopefully it's not something they decide, well, you know what, we just need more of this. That would kill the whole vibe of this for me. But I think being that it's here and there and they do what they do with it, it's cool. I bought it right away. I'm probably going to be buying the other one as well. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say about that. And Marty, did you get my text that I sent you?
Yeah, you're gonna bestow
Yeah, so
us.
everybody stick around for the very end after we do these updates, because I'm starting a new thing tonight. Quote of the week.
All right.
You had a travel guide for a while.
Listen, just let me do me.
Anyway, we'll talk about this in the dugout. I think it's Jim's pick tonight. Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Or is that right?
I do think it is.
Okay, cool. Get you blown up. Oop, what did I do? I hit the wrong button. Here we go.
All right. So I think I'm going to right the ship a little bit.
That's why I'm here.
Oh, that's such a fun record.
Let's do some Whiplash, Power and Pain.
That's a great thrash record.
This was a great, challenging week, seriously, TJ. But it's time for a palate cleanser.
He's gonna get our views back up there again after this one.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm here to destroy the algorithm and peace out.
Right on. Well, does anybody have? First of all, to say thanks everybody again joining us this Wednesday. Had a lot of fun as always. We'll be back next week. Show notes. Friday, Dwayne Lazarus is coming back. We're going to be talking about our favorite and least favorite cover songs by metal bands. So that should be a fun one. And probably tomorrow around 9 o'clock, there's going to be a massive Nile discussion uploaded between myself, S. Craig Zoller, and Melanie Loves Death Metal. Check that out. It's a 3-hour long episode. So get your popcorn and favorite beverages. And does anybody have any plugs coming up?
Will Zoller be singing on it?
It's death metal, so the singing is rather subdued, but there's some riff emulation and a few little verses dropped, but not many. It's all good. It's a good conversation. We had a good time with it. But yeah, anybody have anything to promote before we jump that's coming up on your channels and or labels or whatever?
I hope to have something recorded this weekend, but I'll throw that up on the socials, and probably by the next time we sit down and on Wednesday, I'll have something to promote.
Yeah, I think next Wednesday will be Christmas Day.
Yes. Yeah.
If that's, I'll be here because I have no life, but I understand if people can't make it, but typically we all.
You can take a seat to Power and Pain. Whiplash will put you in your place there. So.
Right. And for all of you folks out there, we started a Heavy Metallurgy Discord channel, so link in the description. And yeah, check that out. And what else? Oh, there was something. Oh yeah, Saturday on Binary Recordings, the new Canis Dearest by the Grace of Death album drops, and all the pre-orders except for a couple are out, and the album is streaming in full on Decibel Magazine, Deciblog, on the decibel.com channel. So go check out, if you want to check out the new Canis Dearest, it's there for streaming. So good album, very good US black metal. Go check that out. And yeah, the Discord channel is my new full-time job apparently, because yeah, we're going to see how long that lasts till the newness wears off. But anyway, TJ, you wanted to bestow us with some nugget of all
right, people. Remember, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, your frozen corpse will be a monument to your failure. Good night. Good night. Good night.
Good night.